Hey guys, hope you're doing great today. It's Palm Sunday. It's a big deal for most of us that follow Jesus, but maybe you're one of those people that's just beginning to figure out who Jesus is. Never been to church. Maybe you've gone to church forever and still don't know. That's okay. I'm going to do this message for you that's called Why Does It Matter? Do you remember when you were a kid? There was someone in your life, whether it was your parents or adults around you, but they would tell you things that they felt mattered. They would tell you, hey, make sure you do this. Make sure you brush your teeth. Make sure you go to bed at a decent time. Make sure you eat a little bit of breakfast before you go to school. There were all these things like wear your seatbelt so you don't get killed in a wreck. Don't smoke. It'll give you lung disease. Everything is something that they convey to you that you kind of go, yeah, whatever, and we go along with our life and we live our life the way that we want to. But when we get older, we look back and we figure out maybe they were telling us the truth. Maybe some of those things really were true. Well, the same thing is true in the Bible. There's a place where Jesus basically says, if you can have the faith of a child when you follow him, and as you learn about Jesus, you're more likely to absorb it, to take it in, to adopt it into your way of life. The idea that a perfect stranger tells you something, it carries no weight. But Jesus says, listen, you're here with me now. I'm telling you these things, and if you can take on the faith of a child, if you can have that innocence to just say, okay, Dad, I got you. I'm listening to you. I believe you. Remember that some kids do that. Some kids actually, when they're little and their parents tell them something, the kids are like, my dad's Superman. I believe everything he tells me. And it shapes the way that they do life. And Jesus was basically doing the same thing. He's saying, if you can take on the role of a child when you follow me and just innocently listen and follow me, your journey will be a lot more faith-based, and you'll avoid some of the crazy mistakes that the rest of the world makes. You'll avoid some of those terrible moments in time, because we tend to be very strong-willed as humans, and as we get older, we think we know everything. Just like when a teenager says, when they're 18 years old, my parents know nothing. I know you've heard that. You might have said it yourself. But teenagers typically believe that they know more than their parents, until they become a parent and they get a little older in life and they say, oh wow, Mom and Dad were right. What they were telling me was true. And that's really what Jesus is trying to convey, is don't waste your time in that circle. Just trust me. Follow me like a child and we'll get there sooner. So, Palm Sunday, the reason that I want to bring it to your attention today is I've been thinking about the idea how we as a society don't necessarily buy into all the things that we hear about Jesus. We don't buy into the things of the Bible. Maybe you're at a church where you say, I don't know what this guy's talking about, but I don't buy into it. So I want to go and take you back to that time period. It's in Mark. It's around between Mark 14 and just a little past that. We begin to see Mark is describing these things that are happening with Jesus, and we realize that Jesus really is who he says he is. When something takes place in the Bible that has been foretold from way back or predicted, or what we call a prophecy, when those things actually occur, people are like, oh my gosh, it actually happened. So let me give you a modern day scenario of that. Imagine that one of your buddies comes up to you and says, hey, in exactly 222 days from now, you're going to be standing in Walmart. A dude's going to walk up to you with a purple fur hat on. His name's going to be Walter, and he's going to hand you a couple $100 bills. And you're like, whatever, that's never going to happen. But then lo and behold, 200 and some days later, you're at Walmart. Here comes Walter in the purple fur hat, hands you the money, and you're just standing there with your mouth open going, how is that possible? How did that happen? That would be considered a fulfillment of a prophecy. Someone told you it was going to happen, it took place, and it was out of everybody's hands except reality. So in the Bible, there are things called prophecies of Jesus. That means that somewhere in the Bible, someone who was a writer hundreds of years ago said these things about our Savior, about Jesus. And in one of those, as Zechariah says, that Jesus will come riding in on the colt of a donkey. Big deal, right? We said it 400 years before it ever occurred. And you're thinking, what's the big deal here? Why does that matter? That means that for 400 years, families were telling their kids, hey, the Messiah is coming, the Savior, Jesus is coming. He's going to ride in on a donkey, on a colt of a donkey, very specific. He's going to ride in, and then we're going to see that he is who he says he is. But he hasn't even been born yet. 400 years of that. Can you imagine? For 100 years, a family's telling their kids, then the next kids for the next 100 years, and the next row. So you got fathers telling their kids and their kids and their kids and their kids, and you begin to think, this is never going to happen. 400 years. But there it was. As we approach Holy Week, Jesus sends two guys into town and says, you're going to go into town, you're going to find these two donkeys. One's going to be the mom and one's going to be the colt. And you're going to tell this guy, hey, the Lord needs these. And the guy's going to hand them off to you. And lo and behold, they walk into town, there's these two donkeys. And Jesus even tells them that the colt has never been ridden. So they go in, find the donkeys, and they realize that Jesus is who he says he is. Now there's a piece in here that I want to share with you. This is also in Mark. Every time I read this, it just blows me away. I'm in Mark 14, down around verse 13. And to keep in mind, we're preparing for the Passover. I'm going to back up one verse. It says, on the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, that's the same as the day the Passover lambs were sacrificed. Jesus' disciples ask him, where do you want us to go to prepare the Passover supper? So they're asking Jesus, hey, it's Passover. It's a big deal. The town's going to be full. Where do you want us to go to set up the meal? What kind of room do you want us to find? Those kinds of things. So here's what Jesus tells them. Jesus sent two of them into Jerusalem to make arrangements. As you go into the city, he told them, a man carrying a pitcher of water will meet you. Follow him. At the house he enters, say to the man, the teacher asked, where is the guest room where I can eat the Passover meal with my disciples? He will take you upstairs to a large room that is already set up. This is the place to go. Go ahead and prepare our supper there. Now verse 16, this is the one that really moves me. So the two disciples went on ahead into the city, and I underlined this. They went into the city and they found everything just as Jesus had said, and they prepared the Passover supper there. You see, Jesus was not just any man. He was our Savior. He was fully God, fully man. And he would give these little hints to these guys, hoping that they would have the faith of a child to hear him and to follow him and understand in these aha moments. Because, I mean, think about it. He's telling them everything. He's telling them that this owner is going to be in this certain place, in this certain room. He's going to be carrying a pitcher of water. I mean, very specific things. These are words written in red, so we know they're directly from Jesus. Now, if we move over onto the other side of the same chapter 14, Jesus tells them, but after I am raised from the dead, I will go ahead of you to Galilee and meet you there. You see, he's already predicting and telling them where he'll be next. Why does this matter to you and me? Why is this such a big deal? Because if we can come to the understanding that Jesus really is who he says he is, then it changes everything. I mean, come on, we go through life, we see everything from politicians to rock stars to famous media icons tell us things, and then they falter or they fail, and we realize they're not who they said they were. But the one person that we know is exactly who he said he was is Jesus. Now you might be thinking, what's the big deal that a couple things come true that were predicted even 400 years ahead of time? Here's where it gets weird, and you got to stay with me on this. Okay, Josh McDowell wrote a book called More Than a Carpenter. If you get a chance, you got to read it. It's amazing. But in the book, McDowell says, how do I show people what the odds are that these prophecies would come true? I mean, we know that our chances of winning the Powerball, for example, are pretty poor, right? somebody goes, oh, it's 1 in a million. It's more like 1 in 300 million that you're going to hit the Powerball numbers. It's same thing for getting hit by lightning. It's very unusual, but it does happen. So Josh goes to a mathematician and he says, can you help me figure out a way to teach people how incredible it is that the prophecies of Jesus came true, how unlikely that was. The mathematician says, let's just do 8 of them, because there's 350 prophecies about Jesus. 350 different times in the Bible where something was said that, where Jesus says these things that came true hundreds of years later. So Josh tells the mathematician, sounds good, let's just do 8 prophecies. What's the chance that 8 prophecies would come true being fulfilled by one man? And the guy does the math and he says it's like 1 in 1 quadrillion. That's so many zeros. It's more than 6 bags of donut holes, I can tell you that. It's a lot of zeros. And he's like, I don't think people understand what a quadrillion is. So the mathematician thinks about it for a minute. He says, I got it. If you could take the whole state of Texas and bury it under 2 feet of silver dollars and mark 1 silver dollar with a red X, throw it out there in the pile somewhere in Texas. Then you send a man blindfolded into Texas and say, find that 1 coin. The odds that he would find the one with the X on it is the same as those 8 prophecies coming true. He said it's mathematically impossible. It is literally impossible that all those things predicted about Jesus would come true, but then they did. That's what takes us from him being just a man to being the one true Savior, the Son of God. Once we grasp the idea that Jesus really is who he says he is, and that he exists all around us and in our lives, it changes everything. It changes how we do life. Everything else in this world will let you down, but Jesus will never let you down. I'm hoping that somehow you can just trust me on this, to just take the time to read about Jesus and realize that he really is our Savior. He is all that we have that is real and true, defies all the odds. And as you go through this Holy Week, take time each day to dig into this journey of Jesus arriving on a colt all the way through to his rising out of the tomb on Easter Sunday. Hey, this is Bob Morrison. I'll see you somewhere out there.